All right, let's dive right in. We're going to unpack the really deep-seated conflict simmering in New Caledonia. You know, it's a French territory right in the heart of Oceania, and it just recently exploded into violence. In this explainer, we're going to get to the very core of why it feels like two completely different worlds, with two totally different ideas about justice and society, are clashing on this one island. So, back in 2024, you probably saw the images flashing across your screen. Burning buildings, violent clashes. I mean, it looked like a paradise in flames. But here's the thing. This wasn't just some sudden riot that came out of nowhere. No, this was the boiling point, the violent result of a conflict that has been simmering for generations. And the stakes here? Well, they just could not be higher. I mean, just look at the economic toll alone. It's absolutely staggering. We're talking an estimated 3 billion euros in damages. This wasn't a minor protest, not by a long shot. This was a full-blown crisis that literally brought the entire territory to a standstill and, maybe more importantly, ripped open the deep, deep fractures in its society for the whole world to see. So that really brings us to the big question, right? Why? I mean, why did this happen? To really understand the flames of 2024, you and we have to look way past the immediate political stuff, the headlines, and go much, much deeper. We've got to get into the very identity of New Caledonia itself. At its heart, the story of New Caledonia is really a story of two worlds, just trying to coexist on one small island. On one side, you have the world of the indigenous Kanak people, and on the other, the world of the French Republic. The problem is, their visions for the future, well, they're often in direct opposition to each other. Okay, now take a look at these demographics, because this is really, really important context. The indigenous Kanak people, they make up the largest single group on the island, 41%. The next biggest group, that's the Europeans. People often call them the Caldoches, who are descendants of French settlers. So, you see, this is not a case of some small indigenous minority. The Kanak are the foundational culture of these islands. But, and this is the key, they exist inside a political system that's been completely defined by France. Which brings us to this, kind of a mouthful of a term, I know, sui generis collectivity, but it's super important. It's basically a unique legal status that was created back in 1998 with something called the Noumea Accord. Now, on paper, the idea was to give New Caledonia more autonomy, right? To create a pathway towards decolonization. But what it actually did in practice was create this really complex dual system where two totally different ideas of law and order are trying to operate at the same time. And right here, this is where we find the absolute core of the conflict. You can think of it as a clash between what we'll call the Kanak customary path and the Western legal code. And listen, these aren't just two different sets of rules like a different traffic code. No, they are fundamentally different ways of seeing the entire world. This quote, wow, it just perfectly captures the Kanak worldview. A Kanak without land does not exist. See, for the Kanak people, land isn't just a piece of property you can buy and sell. It's not a commodity. It's a deep spiritual relationship. It's the very foundation of your identity, your ancestry, your whole community. So when there's a dispute over land, it's never just a simple business transaction. It's a full-blown existential crisis.
Okay, let's break this down even more. On one side, you have the Kanak path. What's its goal? To restore harmony, to literally reweave the social fabric that got torn by a conflict. It's all about the community. Now look at the other side, the Western Code. Its goal is to settle a specific dispute between individuals and make sure the process was fair. The core values, the way they communicate, the entire process, it's all completely different. One is looking for community reconciliation, the other is looking for a legally binding settlement. We're talking worlds apart.
So, what happens when you try to force these two totally different systems to operate in the same space? Well, you get a really uneasy and frankly, often dysfunctional coexistence. It's like trying to mash two puzzle pieces together that just don't fit. So let's take a look at how this collision actually plays out in the real world and where all the friction comes from. The fancy term for this is legal pluralism, but you gotta understand, this is not a partnership of equals. Not even close. The most important thing to get is this. The French legal system is the one that decides the rules of the game. It unilaterally determines where and how Kanak custom is even allowed to operate. It basically tries to force this very organic, holistic tradition into these neat little Western legal boxes, like contract law or inheritance. And in doing so, it completely misunderstands what it's all about. And you can see that power dynamic playing out perfectly right here. So, a dispute involving Kanak ends up in a French court. A Kanak customary expert and assessor is called in. But what do? They advise. They don't decide. The final legally binding ruling is always made by the French judge, and it's based on written French law. So Kanak custom gets pushed into this secondary advisory role. It's not an equal partner in delivering justice. And this, as you can imagine, creates some major friction. First off, Kanak custom is completely locked out of all criminal matters, which is a massive source of frustration. You've got that systemic power imbalance we just talked about, where the French state sets all the rules. And then there's the simple fact that you're trying to fit an unwritten oral tradition into a court system that is obsessed with written text. It just doesn't work well. The result is a legal landscape filled with constant tension and misunderstanding. Okay, so where does all this leave New Caledonia? And what can we all learn from this incredibly deep clash of worldviews? Because the implications for ever achieving any kind of real, lasting justice or reconciliation, well, they're pretty profound. Think about it like this. For anyone from the outside trying to mediate a dispute there, the potential for getting it wrong is huge. A Western mediator, for instance, might walk in and focus on the two individuals in the fight, but completely miss that the real parties involved are the entire clans. You might use direct, let's get to the point communication that just comes across as aggressive. Or you might rush the whole process with the time is money attitude, totally failing to grasp that building trust and restoring harmony, you can't put that on a deadline. And that really brings us to the core takeaway from all of this. The path forward isn't about finding some clever legal loophole or a quick fix. It's about completely abandoning that one-size-fits-all approach. It's going to require real humility, a genuine willingness to listen, and prioritizing the slow, sometimes difficult work of building trust over just getting a quick, efficient settlement. Which leaves us with the ultimate, lingering question for New Caledonia, a question that the violence of 2024 has made more urgent than ever. Can these two profoundly different worldviews, these two entire ways of being, truly find a way to build a shared future together? Or, at the end of the day, is this conflict simply irreconcilable? Must one vision for the island ultimately make way for the other? That's the question that hangs over everything.